Catskills region of southeastern New York State is full of outdoor recreation opportunities, as well as arts, cultural experiences, and plenty of history to be explored. I rode hundreds of miles of scenic roads up and over mountains, through forests, past rivers and creeks, lakes and reservoirs, farms, and covered bridges. I hiked well-marked trails to waterfalls, spent 3 nights in a campground, and got acquainted with some local wildlife. The region was home to the famous fictional character Rip Van Winkle and was the site of the 1969 Woodstock Music Festival. There are also a number of ski resorts in the Catskills. In fact, New York has more ski areas than any other state. I managed to tour a good part of the region over the few days I was there. Most of the roads are well maintained. There are, of course, lowered speed limits as you pass through the various towns, but the majority of the roads are rural, with a general state speed limit of 55 miles an hour. There's plenty of great riding, but you do need to stay sharp for the rough spots, blind corners, various obstacles, including wildlife. I saw one cougar in the road, a Lincoln Mercury from 1967, I believe. I avoided a couple of pickup trucks, one rental truck that was trying to pass a dump truck, some turkeys, firewood, fallen rock, a tree limb, and a deer. I couldn't figure out why a beaver would cross the road, so I asked some local folks. They all said, "Damned if I know." In the interest of getting out there efficiently from eastern Massachusetts, I did ride some highway on this trip. I left the highway into the town of Catskill, which includes the village of Catskill on the Hudson River. From the river valley, I rode up the steep Catskill escarpment into the northeast corner of the Catskill Mountains. It was a fun road with tight climbing corners. I knew immediately I was in for a couple days of great riding. Some sections of Route 23A were restricted to one lane due to road work. Even though it was well controlled by flaggers, I have to say that riding around blind corners on the wrong side of the road made me a bit nervous. I camped 3 nights at North-South Lake, which is a very large state campground on the escarpment. The lakes are 1,700 feet above the Hudson River Valley. The campground is within Catskill Park, also known as the Catskill Forest Reserve. It's a 700,000-acre protected wilderness covering a portion of the Catskill Mountains. After setting up camp, my first stop was a short hike to the upper portion of the nearby Kaaterskill Falls. It's a 2-tiered waterfall, with the first tier alone being just a few feet short of Niagara Falls height. From there, I headed down to the local general store to find something for dinner. But it was closed. Fortunately, I always carry a little backup food. I bought a bundle of firewood on the way back to camp and enjoyed a relaxing evening. Day 2 started with a quick breakfast of coffee, oatmeal, and farm fresh eggs. Thank you, Emmett. The forecast called for light rain later in the day, so I was eager to get moving. Butler's Classic American Motorcycle Rides is a 2-map set laying out about 100 rides. One of those rides is the Catskills. I planned a modified version, starting and ending at the campground. I also wanted to ride along the southern edge of the Ashokan Reservoir, based on comments Craig Ripley made in one of his recent videos. That plan worked out well. From camp, I rode down Route 23A to the point where my loop started, and continued a bit further on 23A, until turning onto Route 32 to head north. That took me up to Route 23, another fun road, with great views and some sweeping turns. I don't remember where it came from, but some time ago, I either read or heard, never pass a gas station with less than half a tank. That seems like good advice when traveling through unfamiliar rural areas. At Stanford, I turned from 23 onto Route 10, passing farms along the west branch of the Delaware River. I was maybe a third of the way around the loop, and the clouds were darkening. The road surface got a little rough in some sections, but it wasn't that bad. Delhi was the biggest town I passed through. Looked like a nice town with a lot going on. Eventually, I turned on a county Route 26, back into the mountains. Found more great views with long sweeping turns going up and back down. That took me to Colchester, onto routes 206 and 30. Across the east branch of the Delaware River, and I enjoyed many miles of great riding along the edge of the Papacton Reservoir. Route 30 crossed the reservoir and continued along the other side. I crossed the east branch of the Delaware again and followed Route 28 back into Catskill Park. The town of Phoenicia is known for art and culture. I had read that the Phoenicia Diner was a popular motorcycle stop, so I was looking forward to a late lunch. Closed. I was starting to think I was going to lose some weight on this trip. At Boyceville, I took Route 28A along the southern side of the Ashokan Reservoir. From there, I worked my way back north to the start of the loop. I rode this section of Route 23A multiple times going to and from camp, but I really enjoyed it. When I got back to the general store, the lights were on and there were cars out front, so I was encouraged. They were putting up the closed sign just as I pulled in. I promised I'd be quick, and they let me in. I told them I just wanted something for dinner. I had two choices, hot dogs or kielbasa. I went with the kielbasa. Just up the road, I picked up some more firewood and headed back to camp. It was just starting to rain when I got there, so that timing worked out well. Getting back to camp mid-afternoon wasn't a bad thing. I wanted to do some filming for a video about making coffee in camp. Then it was time for a good fire-roasted kielbasa dinner and a good night's sleep. In August of 1969, I was on Cape Cod. I had every intention of traveling to Bethel, New York to attend the Woodstock Music and Arts Festival, but Mom wouldn't let me go. I was 12 years old. 54 years later, I finally got there. It's now a concert venue called Bethel Woods Center for the Arts. They preserve the original Woodstock site and maintain an excellent museum. More on Woodstock in a bit. Rather than heading east again, down the Catskill Escarpment to the valley, my day 3 plan was to go west on 23A, then south through the middle of Catskill Park, eventually making my way down to Bethel. That took me through Haynes Falls and Tannersville to Hunter. Hunter Mountain, which includes a ski area, is the second highest peak in the Catskills. I turned south onto 214, past Notch Lake and Devil's Tombstone Park and Campground. In the center of the park is a very large sandstone boulder that, according to legend, marks the burial site of the devil. I skipped my date with the devil and continued down to the end of Route 214 in Phoenicia. I repeated a bit of the previous day's ride along 28 and 28A. The diner was open this time, but I had made myself a hearty breakfast of eggs and pancakes back at camp, so I kept going. At Olive, I turned on a County Route 42, also known as Watson Hollow Road, which becomes Peekamoose Road. I noticed the no guardrail warning and wondered whether guardrails are a good thing or a bad thing when riding a motorcycle. Running off the road is never a good thing, of course, but here I realized that it might be impossible to swim while wearing full protective riding gear. And if one were to survive a crash, there's the risk of being arrested for trespassing. Peekamoose Road reminded me of Route 113 along the Maine-New Hampshire border. The Catskills region has long attracted a variety of artists. In the 1960s, the town of Woodstock was home to a community of artists, including musicians like Bob Dylan. Two music industry folks wanted to build a recording studio in Woodstock. We got together with a couple guys who had lots of capital to invest and formed a company called the Woodstock Ventures. Their intention was to hold a music festival in Woodstock to help fund and promote the studio. Many of the more conservative locals were highly opposed to the expected 50,000 hippies coming to town. Tentative festival locations in Woodstock, Saugerties, and Wallkill all fell through. Late in the planning stages, the founders connected with Max Yasgur, who owned a 600-acre dairy farm in Bethel, New York. Bethel had a population of less than 3,000 at the time. Max was himself a conservative who didn't really like the hippies. Max's 27-year-old son, Sam, was able to affect some influence on his father's thinking. As Max explained to his neighbors and town officials, many of the kids of the day were fighting in Vietnam for people's freedom to do what they wanted. They wanted to have a music festival. Permit was granted. Woodstock would be a 3-day event held in Bethel. Once Creedence Clearwater Revival signed on to perform, other major artists of the time began to join. Interest grew, and the founders tried to prepare for 150,000 attendees. It's estimated that 450,000 to 500,000 people showed up. To put that in perspective, the population of Bethel has grown from less than 3,000 in 1969 to a bit over 4,000 today. This is the current courthouse in Bethel. The current concert capacity at Bethelwood Center for the Arts is 16,000. The number of people who attended Woodstock is roughly the current population of cities like Miami, Florida, Omaha, Nebraska, or Atlanta, Georgia. The Woodstock site is on the National Register of Historic Places. For the 50th anniversary, Bethel Woods offered engraved bricks. I thought this one captured the spirit of the festival. On the way back to camp, I finally found a grocery store in the town of Woodstock. Dinner was smoked chicken thighs with pepper and onion. After dinner, put the motorcycle to bed, stayed warm by the fire, then put myself to bed. The next day was the Friday of Memorial Day weekend. I took my time packing up and headed out before the crowds arrived. I returned the now empty firewood bags so they might be reused, passed the general store, and enjoyed the ride down the escarpment one last time.